Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I've never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. I'm going to burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Toadstool Sports. It is Thursday, February 26th. We had a winning day on the show yesterday. The one play won, although, man, did that line move. We had Milwaukee +9 I gave it out at in the morning, and then I did my Instagram video, kind of forgot about it. And then I looked in the evening, and the line was down to 4.5, and then it crashed all the way to 2.5. Although if anybody took Milwaukee at any number, they still actually got the win on it, although I would not have recommended it at 2.5. At that point, it's probably a bit of an overreaction. Obviously, the line moves because Cleveland decided they were going to rest everybody. So I think Cleveland had no Mitchell, no Harden, I believe. That actually worried me because a lot of times the team's backups will show up and there will be line value on that. So but at least we crushed the closing line, So if the line drops to 2.5, obviously I'm pretty fine with a +9. That's a rare scenario, but I was worried about the intensity level. But we got there. I think it might have been a wire-to-wire cover with Milwaukee in that one, and they won outright in the end. So we got that. Maybe I was too selective because some of my college basketball leans were correct. A couple of the stronger ones. I know San Diego State, Grand Canyon. I think there was one other one. What was the other one? Oh, Iowa. I think all of those ones won. A couple of the other ones I recommended were not as good, but yeah. Anyway, we'll move on to today. I'm going to have 3 college basketball plays and 1 NBA play here. I'm still waiting to jump back into the fray with the NHL. Let's try to get this done. Mark, what's up, man? Fading Olympic heroes. Were you doing props, playing them under, or what were we talking? Or, well, I guess in individual sports, I guess you could just go against them. I don't even know how many of those sports you can even actually bet on. I don't know how many lines get offered for the Olympic Games. But generally, I guess that makes sense because the people that are known, probably have odds that are skewed too heavily in favor of them. Kyle, what's up, man? Mark knew all about the dong doping. That's what he was betting on, the ski jump teams that were doping the most dong. So they got the most hang time. I don't know, man. Or betting against Lindsey Vonn and then watching her get injured or whatever. All right, let's get into this college basketball board today, man. It is a Thursday, so it's mid-major Thursday, mostly small conferences playing. There is one huge game in the Big Ten that we'll talk about today that I think is probably on Fox, but I'll have to look and see where. Could be CBS, I don't know. All these different TV stations carry these conferences now. We do have one isolated game at 11 a.m. if you want me to talk about it. Charleston and Hampton in the Colonial Conference, which is still what I'm going to call it. Charleston is pretty close to being locked into the 2 seed here, although not quite. There is an outside chance. I think they could still overtake UNC Wilmington. They would have to win both of their remaining games. Have UNC Wilmington lose. Although I think UNC Wilmington only has one game left because actually Charleston might not be able to get the 1 seed because they lost to UNC Wilmington. So that might have been their only game against them. If so, then they don't have the tiebreaker, I would imagine. Anyway, Charleston's on a 3-game winning streak. They just played their final home game, and they do have... Actually, what am I saying? They have UNC Wilmington on deck. So, yeah, I think if they do win that game, then there may be a chance that they could overtake the 1 seed. I think that might be UNC Wilmington's last game. That's their only game remaining, I should say. Anyway, yeah, I'm out of it. I'm way out of it right now. I would lean against Charleston in this game, though. They're up from 4-5. It looks like the money coming in against that, but I would probably take the points with Hampton. I believe it is Hampton's final home game. And, I talk about how teams in their final home game, a lot of times they will step it up, although they actually played Northeastern last. But I still don't think Hampton, who's lost 3 games in a row, including last time on this floor, losing to horrible NCAAB, I still don't think they're going to overlook that game. So those would be my thoughts on that. Rhode Island at St. Bonaventure at 5 p.m. I don't know why they have this isolated game at 5. It's not on TV or anything. It's on ESPN+. Rhode Island is coming off a really bad loss to LaSalle, but you can kind of explain why, because Rhode Island had their monster win against St. Louis the game before that. So they were obviously in a huge letdown spot. I think the reason I didn't play that, I think it was LaSalle was also in a really bad spot, but Rhode Island took that loss. That's a horrible loss. I would expect them to bounce back because you can explain what happened in that game. St. Bonaventure, I think, is not as bad as people think they are, though. And they have 5 losses in their last 6 games. So I do think that they will show up as well. They do have one more home game after this. I mean, you might get a better performance out of Rhode Island just because, if I can type, just because they're coming off of just such a disgusting game against LaSalle. St. Bonaventure are 2.5-point favorites here. I might slightly lean to Rhode Island, but I think people might look at this and think that there's value playing Rhode Island. Oh, the team with the better record getting points. Like, that looks way too easy to do. So definitely a lot of conflicting factors in that one. And again, I will say, just generally, look at the conference standings here because you do have some teams that have already wrapped up the 1 seed in their conference. So those teams don't have anything left to play for. Teams that are locked into their seed or anything like that, or teams that are eliminated from their conference tournament. The teams that are eliminated from the conference tournament, I will say that they probably will show up in their very last game, though. That's what I will say. And also probably their last home game as well. Like, 'cause, again, you're not playing again after that. So, but I don't even know how many teams are actually even eliminated right now from their conference tournaments. A lot of these conferences get most of their teams in. ESPN2 at 7 p.m. has Temple and Florida Atlantic. I think Florida Atlantic is kind of coming together as they did have some injuries. I think they're actually the better team over Temple, even though Temple has the better record. Temple hasn't looked good as of late, though. They've lost 4 games in a row. They already lost at home to FAU earlier this year, so this might be a game they might actually show up for. There's the thought that maybe FAU would not take Temple seriously because they already beat Temple, but I think they might take every game seriously right now because they're jockeying for seeding in the tournament, and they've lost 7 of their last 8 games, dude. So FAU, I know they're coming off a tough physical game against North Texas, where they're a small underdog there, but I think they might show up for this game because, again, there are a lot of seeding implications here. Like, you want to move up in the standings if you can. So at this point in the season, yeah, I don't know that FAU is going to overlook a team just because they beat them. The money is coming in towards Temple, though, for what it's worth. FAU down from 6.5 to 4.5 here. I might lean towards laying the points, though, to be honest, because, again, I think people are going to look at this and think this line looks way too high and want to take Temple getting points with a slightly better record. All right, first best bet coming up here. Which I think is a major letdown spot. And I think it's a spot where this team is almost locked into their seed now. We're going to fade that team. We're going to fade Winthrop and take Charleston Southern plus 6.5. I know taking them the last time didn't work out that well, but Winthrop is coming off like their game of the year, dude. They had the chance to season sweep High Point, and then they would have I believe they would have had first place in the Big South if they had done that. Although I guess it looks like they'd be a half game behind High Point still somehow, but they would have the tiebreaker. Anyway, that was a monster game for them against High Point, and they fell short, and they lost a massive win streak. I think they won 11 games in a row, and you know what I always talk about? When a team loses a massive win streak, I think that can hang them over because they're just not used to losing. But in this case, they're playing a third road game in 4 games, a fourth road game in 6 games, a fifth road game in 8 games, a lot of road games recently. And again, they're coming off basically their huge remaining game of the year against High Point, the best team in the conference in the Big South. And Winthrop came back and almost pulled off the upset here, man. I think they were like 8-point dogs here, 9.5 actually. And yeah, they almost pulled off the upset. So it doesn't get much more max effort than that for Winthrop. I think maybe High Point got a little bit complacent late in the game when they were up 15, and then all of a sudden Winthrop's within 1 point late in the game. Winthrop actually took the lead at one point in the final couple minutes, so final 5 minutes, I should say. So huge game for Winthrop, man. So I think they might be flat here. Now, they did already beat Charleston Southern at home, but they only beat them by 4. And, you know, sometimes I will point out how when a team barely wins at home and they're a huge favorite, and Winthrop certainly did not cover the spread in that one, a lot of times that will cause them to take that team more seriously. But in a spot like this, I just don't think so, man. And Winthrop does have their home finale up next against Presbyterian, although they already did beat them as well. But their only conference losses are to High Point and I don't even remember who. Oh, the other one was Longwood really early on in conference play, and they already avenged that loss. So anyway, yeah, I see them being in a massive flat spot here, dude. And being 1.5 games back of High Point, even though they do have 2 games left. High Point has 1 game left today, and if High Point wins, then I'm pretty sure it's over, and they win the Big South anyway. So actually, yeah, because High Point only has 1 game. Yeah, High Point would have to lose. Winthrop would have to win their last 2, and then I still don't even know if they have the tiebreaker. And Radford is 4 games back of Winthrop. So Winthrop is effectively locked into the 2 seed in this conference. So they really don't have that much to gain by winning, assuming that I almost said Long Island, assuming that High Point is going to win their game. So, yeah, so we are on Charleston Southern here. Winthrop is a 6-point favorite here now. I know it's a high total in this one, but I would say still do it. Winthrop is kind of a mid-tier luck team, but according to KenPom. But if you look at KenPom's numbers, he does have them outside the top 200 on defense. So their defense is actually close to as bad as Charleston Southern's. And Charleston Southern is the 7th or 8th unluckiest team in the entire country, according to KenPom. So Charleston Southern has underperformed pretty massively. So I like that when you have the luck disparity, according to KenPom, in your favor, because that might mean you're getting some line value on that team. And even though Charleston Southern is the way worse offensive team, I do like that they can potentially score with Winthrop in this way because of the bad spot and because Winthrop is not good on defense. So that's what we're going with there. Garrett, what's up, man? No, my pick yesterday was the Milwaukee Bucks, but the line moved like huge, and yeah, I did not agree with the with the Denver Nuggets. The market did not agree with the Nuggets at all. I think I had a very slight opinion on the Nuggets yesterday, but the Celtics had rested Jaylen Brown the game prior, and it was a huge revenge game for the Celtics. So there was no way that I wanted to fade the Celtics in that spot. And you were getting a little bit of extra line value because of the no-rest scenario for the Celtics. But again, their best player didn't play the previous night. So, yeah, that was not a game that I wanted to get involved in. And I'm pissed because the Celtics were in that game until the fourth quarter. It was a really close game, and then they stopped scoring. High Point at Presbyterian is on ESPNU. I don't know why this game is the one that's being televised, but, well, I guess it's because if High Point wins this game, then they clinch the Big South, like I said. But they're coming off that monster win over Winthrop. But, again, because High Point knows that if they win this game, they're in, I think they'll at least be focused enough to get the win here. And Presbyterian, they might actually take a little bit more seriously because They went into High Point and only lost by 3. So they gave High Point a real scare earlier in the season when High Point was a huge favorite. So there are a couple of reasons why High Point may show up here, but this could be a letdown spot coming up that Winthrop game, man, because really High Point, if they win or if Winthrop loses a game, then High Point clinches the Big South, I believe. Again, if they haven't already, because I don't even know if they hold the tiebreaker against Winthrop or not. And if that's the case, then they don't really have that much of a reason to show up. So I would actually probably try to figure that out if I was going to play this game. I'm not, but High Point is an 11-point favorite. That might mean that High Point hasn't clinched yet, because I think if they had clinched, they probably wouldn't be that big of a favorite. Although you never know with what these odds makers do, because sometimes they just can't judge if the team's going to give effort or not, which is where we come in and we try to say, yeah, we think that they will. Now, High Point was 14.5 at home, though, so I think 11 is actually really high for a road game if that's the case. Like, if 14.5 was an accurate number, they probably should be about 9.5 here. So, I don't know, man. The number seems a little high to me. High Point. I would lean probably towards taking the points with Presbyterian in that one. Plus, I think if a team does need to win to clinch, I think that there's not going to be value on them. Like, the odds makers know this too, and they're going to skew the line towards that team. All right. Mercyhurst at Central Connecticut. Mercyhurst did just get a huge win over Long Island, but remember, Long Island had already clinched the 1 seed in the Northeast Conference, so Long Island had nothing to play for. Still a huge win for Mercyhurst there. Final home game for them, but now they're playing a Central Connecticut team who actually they already beat at home by 18. So Central Connecticut might actually take Mercyhurst a bit more seriously here. Central Connecticut is also 1 game ahead of them, so these teams are still battling for the 2 seed here. Mercyhurst with a win here would actually take the tiebreaker away because they'd be 2-0. They'd have the tiebreaker against Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut's coming off a bad loss at Chicago State. They did lose a 5-game win streak, which I said sometimes will hang you over, but that was such a bad loss against Chicago State, and Mercyhurst is coming off that crazy win against Long Island, even though, again, it wasn't as crazy because Long Island had nothing to play for. I think the spot kind of dictates. I think Central Connecticut would be the way I would play this one. They're up to -3.5 there from 3, but I think I would lay it in that game if I was going to play it at all. I will not give out a play on that, though. I will give out one in the Colonial in a pretty ugly game here. This one's going to be a money line play. We're going to take Drexel money line, even though I don't think Drexel is very good. But we're going to fade the spot that Campbell is in here at Drexel, 7 p.m. This game's not even on any of the TV stations, so you might be able to find a stream. But look at the spot that Campbell is in, dude. So, yeah, I know there's seeding implications here. Campbell is behind Drexel by 1.5 games here in the standings. And usually I don't like to play the team that's higher in the standings. But look at what Campbell just played, dude. They just had 3 games at home against Charleston, William & Mary, and UNC Wilmington, and every game landed within 5 points. So they just played like 3 of the top 4 teams in the conference all in a row and played close in all those games, and now they're coming off of that stretch, and now they got to play a Drexel team they already beat at home by 21. Like, do you think they're really going to pay that much attention to Drexel after all that, even though Drexel is ahead of them in the standings? I just think Campbell might be completely out of steam here, man. And Drexel, they just won 2 games in a row, and this is their final home game. So even though, yeah, they have Hofstra on deck, and that is a huge game, they did lose to Hofstra once. Hofstra's ahead of them in the standings, and one of the best teams in the conference. But I think Drexel being on this nice little 2-game win streak against teams that aren't that good in Northeastern and Towson, even though I think Towson is better than they look, I think they're going to show up for their final home game of the season, Drexel. They want to give the fans something. They're facing a Campbell team that's facing a really difficult stretch of basketball, and Drexel already lost to them. If you look at the game against Campbell, by the way, this game was a huge outlier, too. Let me find it. The Winthrop and Charleston Southern game, by the way, wasn't a huge outlier, so it was kind of a legit, like, close-ish game. Look at this game, though, with Campbell. Like, yeah, Campbell did win the rebounding battle, but Drexel had a horrible turnover margin, -8 in turnovers. and they only shot 20% from three-point range. And Campbell had 28 free throw attempts to Drexel's 8. That is just a massive free throw disparity, dude. Like, I think that type of thing is going to regress. So that made that score really pretty misleading. Like, Campbell statistically really probably should have won that game by like 6 or 7. So that free throw disparity was just insane in that game. And I expect something like that to completely regress. And then if we look at what KenPom has to say about this, we got Campbell 246th in defense. So they're not a good defense. They try to play fast. And they are 125th in luck, so they're a pretty lucky team. KenPom has had Drexel fairly lucky throughout the season, but they're 199th now in luck, so you're getting them as the unluckier team, meaning they've underperformed a little bit, and they're the significantly better defense. And you know me, I like the better defense. We're picking the winner here. I found a money line at minus 110. You could go to the spread market if you find a better spread price, that's fine as well. Drexel, by the way, also slows it way down. So we're getting the slow down defensive team here at home, and I think they might be able to do just that. Slow the game down at home. The home team could usually control the pace more easily, and a slow down team usually has more ease controlling the pace. That might frustrate a team like Campbell that wants to go really fast. Campbell, by the way, again, in their last 3 games, the one really fast game they played was the one that I lost on with William and Mary. That was the one that Campbell actually won. The other 2 games against Charleston and UNC Wilmington were way slower pace, and they lost them both. So they might struggle with a slow-paced game here, man. So there's a lot to like about Drexel in this one. Money line is what I'm doing with that. All right. Keeping it going, man. I don't know. I thought I maybe saw some other angles here in a couple of these games. Florida Gulf Coast at North Florida. Actually, North Florida, I was going to say North Florida just, I remember they had that loss to Austin Peay where they almost pulled off the upset against Austin Peay. That was a huge game, and I told you that I liked Stetson in the next game for North Florida because they were coming off such a monster performance, and Stetson did get there with the cover in the end. But now I think the shoe might be on the other foot here. North Florida's back at home. They already lost on the road by 9 to Florida Gulf Coast. So Gulf Coast might overlook North Florida for that reason, but also because North Florida stinks. We would be fading a couple of streaks here where North Florida's on a big losing streak. Florida Gulf Coast is on a big win streak. But Florida Gulf Coast just beat Central Arkansas, dude. It's probably like 7.5-point underdogs or something. That was a huge win, and it was an overtime game. I watched the end of that game. And it was Florida Gulf Coast home finale, too. So they put in a huge effort to beat one of the teams that was at the top of the conference standings. That was a huge game and a revenge win as well for Florida Gulf Coast. So I think they could be in a major letdown spot in that one. So I do like North Florida. That game almost made my card. It's just that North Florida is legit bad. So I don't know. That one, it was a little bit less appealing to me, and I don't think it's North Florida's final home game. But I'm talking about it anyway, and the market move seems like it agrees, at least early on, with Gulf Coast dropping from 6 to 5.5. But yes, I would take the points with North Florida in that one if I was going to play it. CBS Sports, for some reason, has Delaware at Jacksonville State. I don't know why they have this game. This is a revenge game for Delaware. They did lose, I believe, at home, to Jacksonville State by 3 earlier this year. So maybe a little bit of a road revenge angle here. I think when the home team loses the first game and they're an underdog in the next game, I think you usually do want to look towards them, depending on how big an underdog, I guess. 4.5 here, so I don't know if that means Delaware covered this number or not in the first game. Oh, no, it was 4.5 in the first game. Okay. So Delaware did cover by a half point there. Right, because now Delaware will be a bigger underdog in this one. But Delaware's on a 2-game losing streak. They might show up again because Jacksonville State did already beat them in their own place. But Jacksonville State, I don't think, is in a good spot at all. They just had a close game on the road against Sam Houston. And Jacksonville State, I think, was like 6.5-point underdogs in that one against the team that's running second in the conference. So that was a big game for Jacksonville State, and they only lost by 4. And they have Liberty on deck on a TV game at home, so that's a big game as well on deck. Now, that means I lean Delaware. I would take the points with Delaware here, but one issue I guess I would have with it is that it's a home game on national TV for Jacksonville State, man, and they usually don't get games like that, so that might kind of keep them in check and might keep them still focused here. And the fact that they've lost 4 games in a row and lost their last 2 home games as well, those things might keep them focused here still. I still need a Delaware plus the points. They're a 7-point underdog now with a pretty low total, but that game is not on my card. UTEP at Middle Tennessee. UTEP is coming off 2 performances where they covered, no, they didn't cover against Liberty, but they did play pretty competitively late in that game against Liberty. They fell short of the number really late in the game. And then they beat me with New Mexico State because I was like, we got to fade UTEP off of the Liberty game. Nope. New Mexico State still couldn't get it done, even though New Mexico State dominated that game statistically. They still didn't cover. So UTEP came within that number, and now they're playing a 3rd road game in 4 games. They're playing Middle Tennessee, who's just way underperformed this year, in my opinion. And KenPom, I think, has them as a pretty unlucky team as well. And UTEP actually did beat Middle Tennessee at home earlier this year. So I think I would have to lean to Middle Tennessee here, man. And people are also not going to want to lay 7 points with a Middle Tennessee team that's below 500. So it doesn't look like a great – like, people are not going to want to lay that type of price with a team like that. But I think they are undervalued. I think they have the revenge motive here, or the adjustment scenario, whatever you want to call it. They'll be able to make adjustments to that loss to UTEP. UTEP might take them a little bit less seriously. Middle Tennessee is coming off a win against Delaware, not a big deal, and staying at home. So, yes, I do like Middle Tennessee in this one, minus the 7.5. But that one is not one that I'm really interested in doing anything with. I do also like our great friends at New Mexico State, who keep screwing me after a game that was completely misleading on the final score. New Mexico State actually dominated UTEP. They failed to cover as a big favorite, so I like to take teams that do that. I guess one issue I do have is that they're playing a 5th road game in 7 games, so that is not that easy for them. And they did already beat Western Kentucky somewhere in here. Where's that win? I'm pretty sure they did. Yeah, they beat them 80-64 earlier this year, so maybe New Mexico State won't take them totally seriously for that reason. But I think if we're going to play this game, New Mexico State is the right side, and it almost makes my card because they're coming off almost losing as a home favorite, and it shouldn't have even been that close at all. And Western Kentucky is coming off a huge game, man. They beat Liberty. Liberty was undefeated in the conference, and Western Kentucky went into Liberty and just smacked them by 21 points. So I think Western Kentucky is going to be in a major letdown spot off of that, even though, yes, I know they did lose to New Mexico State already this year. One game where New Mexico State actually played well for once, or didn't wind up on the massive negative end of free throw disparity, because that's basically why New Mexico State keeps losing, is they're on the wrong end of these giant free throw disparities every single game. It's ridiculous. But I would take the points with New Mexico State, man. I think it is a huge letdown spot for Western Kentucky. They're down from 6 to 5.5 here. That's the way I would lean. KenPom still has New Mexico State as a pretty unlucky team, too. So they're not the better defense, though. I don't believe. So keep that in mind. But that one is close to being a play for me. Number 13, Michigan State at number 8, Purdue on Peacock at 8 p.m. This is the big game of the night. It might be the only big conference game tonight. Yeah, I believe it is. So this game gets a real isolated billing, which might mean that the home team might show up with a little more intensity. But these two teams are really close, like according to KenPom. He's got Purdue 7, Michigan State 11. Now, the one thing you'll notice about KenPom's numbers are that this is kind of a stylistic clash, even though both teams play slow. Michigan State is the way better defensive team, and Purdue is the way better offensive team. And Purdue is significantly better on offense. The biggest gap is Purdue's offense, but Michigan State is the better defense getting points here. And I do like the better defense getting points. And if it's going to be a slower game, that kind of makes sense as well. Michigan State's also coming off a game where they didn't have a great finish against Ohio State, only won by 6. I think the game was pretty much over, and they probably started looking ahead. So I think people won't be impressed by that win by Michigan State, and they might actually want to start looking towards Purdue in this one, because Purdue just bombed Indiana by almost 30 points there. So Purdue's the team that looked way better in their most recent game, and that was a nice revenge win in their Indiana rivalry series there against Indiana. So that was a big win for Purdue. So they might be feeling pretty high on themselves here. So I actually probably lean to Michigan State plus the points in this one. Because I think the situational setup's a little bit better and they're the better defense. Purdue's up to a 7-point favorite here. And yes, I know they will get a boost from being a home team here on a national stage, but of course, Purdue is used to that type of thing, which might mean that they'll make it into a little bit less of a big deal. But these teams are fighting for seeding as well, man, in the NCAA tournament and the Big Ten tournament. So both teams are going to show up for this, in my opinion. Total is pretty low in the 140s, which does make sense. I would say I wouldn't really disagree with an under because both teams do play slow, but I would prefer something like that if both teams had the edge on the defensive side, but that isn't the case, obviously. Purdue has the edge on the offense. Michigan State has it on the defense. All right. Denver at Oral Roberts. I do not like Denver in this spot. Coming off of beating St. Thomas. That was a nice win for Denver, man. Which I believe might have been a season sweep of St. Thomas for them. Oh, no, they lost by 4 in the other one. No, my mistake. But they played them well both times. That was a nice win. Now, that was Denver's final home game, too. And now they go on the road to face Oral Roberts, who is at the very bottom of this conference. Denver, yeah, I mean, they do have some seeding to play for here, but they know they're going to be one of the lower seeds in the Summit Tournament. So coming off a big win like that and playing an Oral Roberts team that sucks, and they already beat them by 11 at home, I just don't see them taking Oral Roberts totally seriously here. Oral Roberts at least has won 2 of their last 4 games, so they've been able to get a couple of wins here, and this is their final home game. Both their wins did come at home, so I would lean Oral Roberts in this one, man, for all those reasons, especially because I think it's a letdown for Denver. Denver's at 4.5 here. But yeah, I would lean towards taking the points. And Oral Roberts, I think, is still battling with Kansas City because I think one of the teams gets left out of the Summit Tournament, if I'm not mistaken. Because I think they have 9 teams, and I think only 8 of them make the tournament. But I might be wrong about that. The 9 and the 8 might play each other in like an opening round game. I forget. So my apologies for that. But I still lean Oral Roberts in that one, plus the points. All right. Utah Valley, by the way, I'm not really going to talk about their game here against Tarleton, but somebody told me yesterday that Utah Valley is having some like legal proceeding or some hearing, I guess. Maybe it's with the NCAA, maybe against the WAC, trying to get the WAC to lift their ban so they can play in the WAC tournament. I hope they win because they are the best team in the WAC. And it would actually benefit the WAC to let them be in because why wouldn't you want your best team to be able to participate in the postseason? You know what I mean? To represent your conference. But again, I think the WAC should disband. It's just such a small conference now. I think that the team should just separate into 3 or 4 different conferences. All right. Yeah, we have some, we got SWAC action tonight, Ohio Valley. None of these games are that interesting, except I guess Tennessee State and Southeast Missouri State is a fairly interesting one because these 2 teams are both tied a half game behind Morehead State, who is somehow winning the Ohio Valley right now, or at least in the in the 1 seed right now. I don't buy Morehead State. KenPom as an extremely lucky team. I have not even mentioned them as being in the running to win the Ohio Valley. I guess I should technically, because they might be the 1 seed, but I think they're worse than Tennessee State, SEMO, UT Martin, probably SIU Edwardsville. Like, I do not think Morehead State is close to the top team in this conference. Now, Tennessee State is coming off a nice win over SIU Edwardsville, who's not a bad team, and Tennessee State embarrassed them by almost 30 points in their final home game for Tennessee State. Now they got to go on the road to face Southeast Missouri State. They did lose to them at home earlier this year by 9, so I don't think they're going to overlook this game. I think it's a big game for both teams. Southeast Missouri State is coming off fourth straight road game where they actually won the final 3 of those, including beating UT Martin in there, and then they finished by beating Little Rock. This will not be their final home game. They do have one more after this, but to me, I think the spot might set up a little bit better for them now that they're back at home. It's a tough call on this one. I don't really have anything. Yeah, I don't have any strong opinion on this, really. But Southeast Missouri State's a 4-point favorite. I probably would somewhat lean towards laying it there. I mean, people might want to take the points because, you get to take points with a team with a slightly better record. But I think the odds makers are kind of telling you that SEMO is like the slightly better team there, and I wouldn't really disagree. ESPN 2 at 9 has Wichita State at Memphis. Memphis still gets this TV billing, man, even though they're not playing well. I think Penny Hardaway is going to get fired. I've been saying he's a bad coach for a long time. Although I do think Memphis is not as bad as they look. And looking at this game, Memphis is actually a favorite in this game, even though they have a way worse record than Wichita. That looks really, really suspect. Like, the public is, if they want some TV action, they are not going to be playing Memphis in this game, even though Memphis has, all the name recognition. Like, look at these records. They're just not going to do it. Like, I'm actually getting Wichita, the team with the better record, as the slight underdog. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. Yeah, that looks tempting. But the only really good win in there was that home win against Tulsa. They just beat an overrated Temple team in their last game. Now they got to go play Memphis, who they already beat by 15 at home. So Wichita might not take Memphis as seriously as they would otherwise. I think Memphis, maybe they'll get up for it a little bit more because it is a TV game. Memphis has lost 4 games in a row, including losing back here at home against UAB by double digits. Not a good effort from Memphis in that one. I think they were favored in that one probably, and they still lost the game. So Memphis is staying at home off of a home favorite loss. Yeah, they were 5.5-point favorites. So I like the spot for Memphis better here too, man. So for me, this game is Memphis or pass. Memphis on the money line would be my lean in that one. They're a 1-point favorite with juice in that one. Next up is my final college basketball play. We're getting through it, man, because with these lower conferences, a lot of the games I just kind of skip. Try to focus on the TV games and the interesting games. We're going to take UC Riverside plus 11.5 against UC Santa Barbara here. This is all about the spot pretty much. UC Santa Barbara is 1.5 games off the lead in the Big West. But you can see the Big West is a cluster right now with Hawaii, UC Irvine, Cal State Northridge, UC Davis, UC Santa Barbara, and Cal State Fullerton, and UC San Diego all being within 2 games of each other with a couple of games to go. So that's the situation here. But look at UC Santa Barbara's scheduling spot, man. They just played 2 of those teams that I just listed. Cal State Northridge at home played an overtime game against them and fell just short, lost by 2. Then they had to go to Hawaii. So they flew out to Hawaii, and they played Hawaii 5 days ago, I think. So they don't even have a full week of rest to have to change time zones again. Coming back from Hawaii, huge game because Hawaii is atop the Big West. But that was a revenge game for Hawaii, I'm pretty sure, because UC Santa Barbara beat them on the mainland earlier this year. Huge game for both teams, though, but UC Santa Barbara fell just short, and that was an overtime game as well. So they're coming off 2 overtime games against 2 of the top teams in the conference, including a close road game against the top team in the conference, Hawaii. Now they got to play a UC Riverside team who is near the bottom of the conference, and they already beat by 8 at home on the road. So Santa Barbara already went into Riverside and beat them, so they might not have full focus here, man. And then look who they play in their final 2 games, Santa Barbara. They got to play UC Irvine, who's the next closest team to Hawaii, tied basically with Hawaii in the lead for the conference. Huge game there. And then they finish with UC San Diego, who's a half game behind them in the standings. So this is like pretty clearly the bad spot in the schedule, the down spot. And UC Riverside in this game has the same amount of rest. They last played 5 days ago as well, but they're staying in the state of California. They just actually played at home against UC Davis, so they're only going from Riverside to Santa Barbara, which is not a huge trip for them, I don't believe, there. So, yeah, that's what we got going on. I like Riverside in this one, man. Riverside, just took that home loss. Might be good for them to go out, focus on another game here against a team that might not focus on them because they already beat them. And for Santa Barbara, it's also not their final home game. That comes against UC San Diego in their final game. So we will do it and take the 11.5 with Riverside. This is a lower scoring game, as it's projected to be a lower scoring game here in the 140s. UC Riverside, they actually play a mid-tempo style. They're better on defense than offense at the very least, and they're pretty unlucky according to KenPom. They're outside the top 300 in luck, so they're a pretty unlucky team, meaning they've underperformed, so they're better than their record looks. Yes, they're clearly the worst team here, but you see Santa Barbara, they're also unlucky, but not as unlucky as Riverside, and you see Santa Barbara is actually really not good on defense. They're actually so bad on defense that, believe it or not, Riverside is actually the better defense by about 10 ranking spots in KenPom's rankings, so we're actually getting the better defense, getting points technically in this game. It's just UC Santa Barbara's offense is way, way better. But they also play a really slow style. So this game being at UC Santa Barbara, I think they're going to slow the game down, try to shorten the game in a spot like this, just try to get in, get out. They'll try to get in with the win and get out, but they're not going to need style points here. They don't need to cover a huge margin like this. Riverside is the play in that one, man. Hopefully my descriptions make sense here. North Dakota State is at St. Thomas. This is a good one in the Summit, man. These are clearly the top two teams in the Summit. I guess not clearly, but I'll tell you, North Dakota is not close to as good as these two teams. Now, North Dakota State already has clinched the Summit. With 2 games left to go, they have a 3-game lead, so North Dakota State has nothing to play for now. They're going on the road. They already beat St. Thomas at home. So you know where I'm going with this. Even though, yeah, they're on a 4-game win streak. Like, yeah, maybe they'll want to still show up. But I think that North Dakota State might want to keep something close to the vest here, man. Because they know that this Summit League could quite likely come down to these two teams facing off in the conference tournament final for the bid in the NCAA tournament. So I think North Dakota State, already having clinched the conference, they really don't need to show everything they might plan on showing in the conference tournament. So they might just say whatever, start packing it in. We don't want to, show St. Thomas what we're going to show them. They do have their rivalry game against North Dakota next as well. St. Thomas, I think, will want to get some semblance of revenge here. And they're coming back home after 3 road games where they lost 2 of them. They did just lose on the road to Denver as a favorite, which was not great. Being back home in revenge mode against a team that really has no motivation that you could really find, I would lay it with St. Thomas in this one. They're down from 3.5 to 3, but that's the only way that I could see that game playing out. I mean, at the very least, again, like I said, you do not want to play on teams that have already clinched the 1 seed in their conference tournament. So those are my thoughts on that. Portland State and Montana State is a pretty good one in the Big Sky. These two teams are first and second in the conference standings. So the Portland State has opened up a 3-game lead in the conference now. And believe it or not, Eastern Washington has been on a huge run, and they've moved up into a tie with Montana State, and Northern Colorado is right behind them. I told you Northern Colorado would be around at the end of the season, man. Portland State is coming off a loss to that Eastern Washington team. They lost by 12 at home, though, so maybe they will show up for this game against Montana State. But they did already beat Montana State at home by 9. So this is going to be a little bit maybe of a revenge game for Montana State here. Portland State, might feel pretty assured the number 1 seed at this point, having a 3-game lead. Like, everything would have to go wrong for them to lose that 3-game lead. They'd have to lose out, and Montana State or Eastern Washington would have to win out or something crazy like that. That's not going to happen. So I think Montana State probably does have more motivation here. This will be a big home game. Their next home game, which is their last one, is against the worst team in Sacramento State. So I think Montana State's going to get up for this one at home against a team that already beat them once, that is ahead of them in the standings, Portland State. So Montana State is my lean in this one. They're minus 2.5 in that one. I would probably lay the points if I was going to do anything with that game. CBS Sports at 9 p.m. has FIU at Sam Houston State. I don't really know why. Or I guess they're just Sam Houston now. A lot of these teams are dropping the state component. Are they no longer a state school? I don't know. Maybe that's good. Oh, they're private now? It's a private company, bro. No. Florida International, they're coming off a win at home over Missouri State. That was a win that I gave out on the show on Saturday. Missouri State covered for us on a bad Saturday for us. FIU was coming up that huge game against Liberty where they'd almost beaten them, so they were in a bad spot, but I thought they would be looking ahead to this game against Sam Houston. Maybe they were. They already lost at home by 13 to Sam Houston, so Sam Houston might not take Florida International totally seriously here. They are coming off a win over one of the better teams in the conference, Jacksonville State, although Sam Houston didn't cover in that game, remember. So there are a couple of reasons why Sam Houston might show up here. One is that they're a favorite coming off a non-covering win, which sometimes you'll see that team show up with a better effort in the next game. But they are staying at home, so the travel spot's better for them. FIU having to go to Texas is probably a little bit of a weird spot. And Sam Houston doesn't get that many home games on national TV, man, and this is one of them on CBS Sports. So these small conference teams getting to host these games like that and get spotlighted, they might actually show up for those reasons. Sam Houston's up from 6 to 7 here. It's a tough call in this one, man. I probably still slightly lean towards FIU in this game, which would be like, the road revenge angle and whatever. I slightly still lean that way, but not a strong opinion at all. Yeah, and then we have UC Irvine and Cal State Northridge is a fairly good game in the Big West. UC Irvine, I believe, lost to Northridge earlier this year. Am I right about that? I might not be right about that. No, they beat them, excuse me. Irvine beat them by 14 at home earlier this year. So this is actually a revenge game for Cal State Northridge. UC Irvine's coming off a close call against UC San Diego. And those teams, I think, really don't like each other now, man. They're 1-1 against each other this year after they faced off in the last two conference finales, I think, with those teams splitting those 1-1. They split the season series 1-1 as well in 2-point games either way. And UC Irvine is coming off one of those, so playing a team they already beat as well. And with Santa Barbara on deck, even though they're lower in the standings at Cal State Northridge, I don't know, man. I think it's a little bit of a tough spot for UC Irvine, although they're actually tied in the standings with Cal State Northridge, believe it or not. So there is reason for both teams to show up here. Northridge is coming off a really bad performance against Long Beach, and I should have made that one of my plays. I definitely talked about that game, and I gave out Long Beach on the show as a lean, but it was not one of my plays. Look at the spot that Northridge was in, man. I don't know why I didn't add that. They had played Hawaii and UCC. Actually, did I add that? I forget. Maybe I did have that on my card. Because Cal State Northridge had beaten Hawaii and UC Santa Barbara in an overtime game, I think is what that was. Yeah, and then they had that game against Long Beach, which was like the only caveat was that they'd already lost to Long Beach once this year. But they had this huge game against Irvine on deck. So you know what? I think I did give that out as a play on Long Beach. I hope I did, because it still wound up being an easy winner on the cover. So in this game, you do have Northridge coming off a bad performance against Long Beach that was completely expected if you know the essence of the sandwich spot. So I do like Northridge in this game. It would be a money line play for me. They're -1 in this game. Don't see the percentages yet on it, but that would be my lean in that game. All right, so that's the college basketball board there. We'll move over to NHL, where I'm still not going to give out any NHL plays today. We have a huge NHL board today, though. But I'm skipping it again until tomorrow, where I think we might be able to find some better spots in the upcoming days. And similar to what I did with the NBA, I waited the first couple of days. One thing I will say before I quickly take a break here, one thing I will point out, which I already pointed out yesterday, and I forgot to point it out with the NBA, is that when teams come back from breaks and you have teams that are on a back-to-back here coming out of the break, so some of these teams today played yesterday, I don't really want to look to fade those teams, because I think having a game out of the way is actually helpful, especially if it was a win that won't make them overconfident. It will actually just give them some momentum, whereas you'd think that the team coming out of the break that didn't play yesterday is the way more rested team, right? But the problem is that team might have a lot of rust, and if that team went into the All-Star break on a really good note, like on a huge win streak, that's really the sweet spot where I think you actually want to come in and fade that team and actually go with the team that played yesterday. You know what I mean? So if you have a setup where you had a team yesterday that, say they like barely won against some bad team or something yesterday, I think that's a good thing because that gives them some momentum, and they're still not going to be that tired because they've only played one game, throughout like the break and whatever, you know what I mean? So the fatigue of the back-to-back doesn't hit like it does in the middle of the season. So they've shed that rust, and if they're up against a team that went into the break on a large win streak, you know what I mean? That's the sweet spot where you actually want to play on the team that actually did play yesterday, if that makes sense. And I use a similar handicapping technique when it comes to like the tournament, I'm always looking to try to find one of the play-in teams to play on when they play in and they get into the tournament, because people are always thinking, well, that team sucks because they didn't even make the round of 64, right? Especially if they look bad in the first 4 game and they win anyway. That's the sweet spot there where you actually want to play on them in the first game of the tournament because they might be getting a team that's cold, maybe a team that hasn't played for a while. You know what I mean? Although if a team hasn't played for a while, they're probably off a loss, though. So that's a little bit of a different scenario. But I'll be right back. All right, let's get into this hockey board here, man. Hopefully, Mark Claire is still around here. Because that name pronounced the same way, by the way, even with the French spelling. Oh, wait, I'm looking at college basketball. What am I doing? I was looking ahead. Oh, shit. Playing some chess there. No, all right, hockey. Because I know Mark was excited that hockey was back. Columbus at Boston's the first game up. My Boston Bruins. These two teams have both not played since before the All-Star break. But this is one of those scenarios where you have one team that was really hot, Columbus. They basically couldn't have gone to the All-Star break any better. They won 7 games in a row with 2 shutouts going into the All-Star break. So you know what I'm about to say. When a team goes into the break on a really great winning note like that, their momentum can get completely disrupted, and that might throw them off. So I actually do like my Boston Bruins in this game. I don't really think Columbus is as good as their record looks. However, I don't think Boston is as good as their record looks either, though. They're still an underdog to even make the playoffs. But the Bruins, this is going to be some much-needed rest for them because they had huge games against Tampa and Florida going into the All-Star break, and they had close games against both of them, played well in both games, both in road environments pretty much. So that break, I think, is going to help them quite a bit coming into this game. I don't know if Swayman is going to be in net, but I don't think we have to worry about the fact, he was on the All-Star team, or the Olympic team, the All-Star team. He was on the Olympic team, but he was the backup. So, Hellebuck was getting all the action pretty much, including in the gold medal game, of course. So I don't think we have to worry about like a Swayman letdown if he is in net here. I would lean to the Bruins. They're minus 110 on the money line there, but it's not really that strong of an opinion for me. Not enough to want to play it. New York Islanders are at Montreal. The Islanders went into the break on a couple of game win streak here. So, the win streak could get disrupted potentially by having to go into the All-Star break. A decent win over New Jersey to finish that, but they might still focus for Montreal, man. I mean, Montreal's got a good record, so they're not really the type of team you overlook. Montreal had won 4 of 5 going into the All-Star break, including winning the last game, but they didn't really have a huge win streak disrupted. This game is a pretty difficult read. I don't really have a strong opinion on this game at all. I guess I'll slightly lean to Montreal. They're down from minus 155 to minus 145, though, so some early movement towards the Islanders, but you never really know what's going on with some of this early market movement like that. Detroit is at Ottawa. Detroit went into the break on a losing note, losing to Utah pretty badly, 4-1. So not a great loss, but I think I probably gave that out as a play because Detroit had beaten the Avalanche the game before that, so that was a huge win. Now Detroit might show up, because they went into the All-Star break on a bad note, but there are some concerns in that, they do have Carolina next on Saturday, so that is a huge game on deck, so there is the potential look ahead. And I think Ottawa will get up for this game because Detroit is a team with a good record. And, yeah, Ottawa went into the break on a positive note, beating Philadelphia in overtime, winning 5 of their last 6 games. So, from that perspective, momentum-wise, Detroit kind of makes sense here. But Ottawa, I think they might focus on this. They know they have to go out on the road next, and they do play their rival, Toronto. But, I don't know, man. The money is coming in on Detroit, though, for what that's worth. Even though I wouldn't think Ottawa would really overlook a team that has a good record like Detroit. But, situationally, I guess I won't really disagree with the Red Wings here. Although it looks really easy to take Detroit as an underdog like this, right? Ottawa's down from -145 to -135. Why would Detroit be getting such an underdog price? I mean, I know they're on the road, but home ice is probably only worth about -120 or so. 50% of tickets, 73% of the cash on Detroit. So the money is coming in on Detroit. I'm conflicted with that game. You can tell why I'm not playing it. But as far as the situation, momentum-wise, Detroit does make sense in that regard, I guess. Toronto at Florida. Toronto did play last night. So this is our first team that's on a back-to-back today, I'm pretty sure. They lost 4-2 at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is a very good team. The game wasn't really close, though. Toronto was down 4-1 late, so it's not like they had a close game. It wasn't like an empty net goal at the end where the game was close. It wasn't really that close. But having to play at Tampa and at Florida back-to-back is still not exactly the easiest thing to do. So, I did say that teams that have a game under their belt, they do tend to have momentum. But Florida went into the break on a bad note, dude. They lost 5 of their last 6 games, including getting absolutely smoked 6-1 against Tampa. So I think Florida might want to show up and just get a win here. So in this game, I don't really love Toronto here in this one. Florida down from -165 to -153. I think Florida coming out of the break, coming out of that the break they went into on a bad note, whereas Toronto had a huge game last night. I know they got a game under their belt, but, I don't think there's going to be the rust here. How could you develop rust when you went into the break on such a bad note, Florida's down from -165 to -153. The percentages aren't really showing yet, but I think I would actually probably slightly lean to Florida there. New Jersey at Pittsburgh. New Jersey did play yesterday in a game that I think they probably got up for, and they lost a close one, 2-1 to a Buffalo team that's having a good season. So I don't know that I like this momentum angle with New Jersey here, really. Even though, yes, they did get a game under their belt yesterday, it was a tough game against a pretty decent team. So New Jersey now having to travel with no time off to Pittsburgh. Still don't know if that's exactly the best scenario here. Pittsburgh did go into the All-Star break beating Buffalo, though. So people might see that common opponent, Pittsburgh just won at Buffalo, and Buffalo just won at New Jersey. So this is really easy, right? You take Pittsburgh here, maybe the public will think that. Although Pittsburgh only had that 1-game win streak going into the break because their longer win streak had been disrupted a couple games prior to that. Now, I guess one other thing to be aware of is that Pittsburgh does not have Sidney Crosby. He got injured during the Olympics, so he will not be here. I don't know how long he's out for. So does this make it an injured player spot? I don't know, man. It's hockey. An individual player can only really have that much of an impact. So I usually don't really put much weight into the injured player theory in hockey. Yeah, he's got one of the biggest names in hockey, but he's also really, really old, man. At this point, I guess he's still one of the best players on Pittsburgh, but, he's not as impactful as he once was. All the money's coming in on New Jersey here, it looks like, in this one, for what it's worth. Pittsburgh up from -135 to -142. 67% of the tickets are on Pittsburgh, 81% of the cash on New Jersey. So the market read, at least for now, although I would keep my eye on this pregame screen to see what changes, because the numbers that are being tracked right now, it's not a huge volume right now, so these numbers could really, really shift. So we'll see. But the money right now is saying New Jersey. Tampa Bay at Carolina is, I think, the best game of the night. These two teams are really good. Tampa did play yesterday, and maybe this is a scenario where you do want to look towards the team that has momentum now coming out of the break. And it looked like Tampa might have had their momentum potentially disrupted because they went into the break on a 5-game winning streak. But nope, they came out and won last night. Now they are going to Carolina, but I think Tampa might have momentum here, man. I mean, that was an easy win for them against Toronto. They won as a big favorite. Although, yes, you're probably not going to get Vasilevsky in this one because it is a back-to-back. He played last night, so you'll probably get Johansson. And things did not go well the last time he was in net with an 8-5 loss to Columbus. So he is definitely a downgrade. But we'll see what happens here, man. And then you got Carolina coming out of the break. They went into the break on a good note. They'd won 3 games in a row. So they might have the momentum a little bit disrupted and have some rust to shed, even though I expect them to show up for a game against Tampa Bay. But I like the setup better for Tampa Bay in this one. I would lean towards Tampa. I would grab them on the money line if I was going to play it. Carolina down from minus 155 to minus 147, so they're not a massive favorite here, even though the odds makers are still giving Carolina enough respect that they're saying they're the better of the two teams. Dirty Sock, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. All right. ESPN has Philadelphia at the New York Rangers as the first game of their late-ish doubleheader tonight. Don't know if this is the greatest game, especially because, as we know, I have to point it out every time, the Rangers are a horrendous home team. 6-15-4 at home. Yeah, that's great. So you know me. For the Rangers, it's basically if they're at home, I'm either going to fade them or I'm going to pass. Now, in this one, I don't think the spot is that bad because the Rangers did go into the break on a 4-game losing streak. Now, I have no idea if they're getting Shesterkin back because he's been out for quite a while. Don't know. I have no idea, to be honest. I'm guessing he's on the IR, so I'm guessing he is not going to be back. So something to keep in mind there. But the fact that the Rangers went into the break on a bad note, they might come out with focus here. That might disrupt their losing momentum. But Philadelphia also went in on a losing note. They lost 6 of their last 7 games, I think is what that is, including their last 2. So they might show up for this game as well here. The Rangers are getting the money for what it's worth. They're up from minus 110 to minus 120. 67% of tickets are on Philadelphia. 77% of the cash on the Rangers. I kind of see both teams showing up, though. And you know me, like, there's just no way that I can play the Rangers at home, especially as a favorite. Like, unless the spot is great. And while, yeah, I expect them to be focused, I think both teams will be. So I'm not sure that I totally agree with that market read there. But the market seems to have a strong indication on the Rangers in that one. So act accordingly, I guess, with that one. I'm just telling you how I think about all these games, man. Seattle did play yesterday, and they got pretty much blasted by Dallas. It was not a good game. They lost 4-1. But Seattle now does have a game under their belt, but it was a game they probably got up emotionally for. Now they got to go to St. Louis. So even though, yeah, maybe they've shed the rust a little bit, you know, it was against a good team where Seattle was the clear underdog, so I don't know. I don't think Seattle's anywhere near as good as what they looked like they were going into the break. St. Louis went into the break on a bad note, losing 8 of their last 9 games, including their last 3, even though their last game was a close loss to Dallas, who they played 3 times in the couple of weeks leading up to the break. St. Louis might be able to break that losing momentum with the break, man. The break might actually help them. So this is a scenario where, you know, there are a lot of conflicting indicators. St. Louis is down from minus 145 to minus 129. The money is all coming in on Seattle here. 57% of tickets are on St. Louis, 90% of the cash on Seattle. So, again, it looks like there is a lot of respect in the market for these teams that did play yesterday to kind of shed that rust. But this is a scenario where I don't want anything to do with that. But the money is saying Seattle for what that's worth. Chicago at Nashville, as I keep pointing out, this is actually a rivalry game, believe it or not. And one thing I forgot to point out about this rivalry is Nashville actually has a lot of Chicago transplants because it's one of the closer major cities to Nashville. So I think that kind of has some effect on this rivalry here. These two teams do have a rivalry. So I think they both might show up. Chicago, was playing poorly going into the break. I mean, they're not a great team, but they lost 6 of their last 7 games. They got shut out by Columbus going into the break. So even though, yeah, they do have Colorado up next, I don't see them overlooking a rival of theirs. And in this spot coming out of a break where they were bad going into the break, Nashville was also not good going into the break, losing their last 2 and losing 5 of their last 7. So I think they'll show up as well, even though they have a big game on deck against Dallas. I think both teams actually show up here. The money looks like it has come in a little bit towards Chicago. Nashville down from minus 178 to minus 165, although, again, without the percentages, it's hard to really get a good gauge on what really moved that line. I would probably agree that it does look like Nashville's probably favored too heavily there. But you know me, I'm a Nashville disrespecter. I disrespect the Predators. Minnesota is at Colorado. This is kind of an interesting one. I think both teams will get up for this one. Minnesota went into the break on a 5-game winning streak, so the break might hurt their momentum, though. And now they're going to go into elevation. Might have to shed some rust. Colorado did play already. They played yesterday against Utah, and they got a win on the road, but, close to home in elevation. I think that might help Colorado, get the rust out of the way. They got the win there. Now they're back at home, so I prefer Colorado in this one, man. The money seems like it is agreeing with me on this one, even though Colorado dropped from minus 155 to minus 150. 75% of tickets, 98% of the cash on Colorado. Colorado was not playing good hockey for the last month going into the break too, so having that break might help them kind of recollect themselves and come out with some dominance again. Although, again, it's not a game that Minnesota's going to overlook. It's just that I think they might be rusty, so maybe another way to look at it might be, to play Colorado in the first period or something like that. But the fact that they played yesterday, I don't know. Well, actually, the fatigue would come in later in the game. So, yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. Colorado, first period might make sense. On I don't know if it would be a money line, though, because I don't know how expensive that might get. Calgary at San Jose. Calgary went into the break on a good note, beating their in-province rival, Edmonton. That was a huge win for Calgary going into the break. So I think it's a bad thing that they went into that break riding that high. And now they're playing a San Jose team who, by the way, they just beat on January 31st. So one of their few recent wins was actually against the San Jose team. So it's possible that San Jose might bounce back. Although I looked at that box score, and it wasn't really that much of an outlier. Calgary did actually dominate the game. So that does worry me a little bit. And I think the public might want San Jose in this one because they do have the better record. But they might be kept in check by the fact that San Jose lost 4 games in a row going into the break, including losing to Edmonton and Calgary. And if Calgary beats San Jose, of course, and just beat Edmonton, maybe the public won't want San Jose here. You know what I mean? But I think this is more helpful to San Jose. They lost all those games on the road. Now they've had a long break to disrupt all that momentum. I think the spot is better for San Jose. They're down from minus 125 to minus 123. It would be Sharks money line for me in that one if I was going to do anything with it. And then we have Edmonton at LA in the second of the ESPN doubleheader at 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Both these teams played yesterday. Edmonton was in a barn burner, man. They were winning that game 4-2 in the third period, I think, and I was like, I think I got Edmonton right on my lean to Edmonton yesterday. But nope, Anaheim came back and won the game in a crazy finish, 6-5. So even though, yes, I said I do kind of like to look towards teams that did get that game out of the way, that was a crazy game, man, 6-5. Even though I know Edmonton's only going from Anaheim to LA, it's a very short trip, but I don't think I want to jump on a team that put in a lot of effort in a game like that last night. I like it more, again, when a team had a very low effort win to shed the rust. You know what I mean? That's kind of the sweet spot. The LA Kings, they lost yesterday in a somewhat competitive game, 6-4 to Vegas, where I thought the Kings would have a nice bounce back there, but the Kings are just not a very good home team, man. So that was one hesitation that I had with them, even though I thought they might be in a zigzag spot. The money is all coming in on Edmonton here, though, for what it's worth. Both teams coming up big games last night. So, both teams are coming up big games. Yeah, I mean, they were both games against decent teams, let's say. LA's down from -110 to -107 here. And again, as I said, they're not a good home team this year. So fading them at home does make sense in a lot of cases. 60% of the tickets are on LA, and 92% of the cash on Edmonton. So the money is indicating on Edmonton. I'm not going to disagree with it. I just don't have a strong feel for it. So we're still waiting to actually jump in on the NHL again. NBA, I will have one play. Let's go through these games. I think we have about 10 NBA games today. Charlotte at Indiana. Charlotte is going to be a massive favorite in this one. Charlotte getting a lot of respect from odds makers right now. They're on a 2-game win streak again, but this is going to be their 3rd straight road game, and they just beat Chicago 131-99. I know it's only Chicago, and they're not good, but Charlotte might be riding a little bit high here, and maybe they shouldn't be laying double digits on the road to really anybody still. I don't know, man. Indiana's coming off a bad loss and staying at home, and they still haven't won since before the All-Star break. I thought they were going to give me a better performance. I know I gave them out as a play on Tuesday. They got blasted by Philadelphia, but now you're looking at a team that was on the wrong end of a 20-plus point loss against a team that was on the right end of a 20-plus point win, and that team's laying 12.5 on the road. I think just what's the word I'm looking for? Just on principle, basically, I would have to lean towards the Pacers plus the points there, but it's not one that's going to make my card. Miami at Philadelphia. Miami did just have an ugly loss at the Bucks, but as I told you, the Bucks are still trying to win games, man. You saw it again last night. Miami, but, they might be in bounce-back mode after that, after losing to a team they probably took for granted. They lost the game as a favorite. Now they got a Philadelphia team that has a better record that maybe they won't overlook. Don't know if Joel Embiid is playing. That's basically always the question for Philadelphia right now. We know that George is suspended. But the spot is not very good for Philadelphia. They are returning home from a road trip that they've been on since last Thursday now. So Saturday, my mistake. They played Thursday, but then they went on the road on Saturday. So it's not one of these long road trip returns, but still, I talk about when a team returns home from a road trip, a lot of times they'll still have stuff to do back at home and they won't be focused. And in this case, they do have a huge game on deck against Boston and then San Antonio, and those are both TV games. So I prefer Miami in this one, man. And Philadelphia coming off that win that made them look really good against Indiana, not having the letdown off of that misleading win over Minnesota with all the 3-pointers that the Sixers hit there. There's got to be a letdown somewhere at some point, man. And this one, I would take the points with the Heat in this one. Sixers are a 2-point favorite. 60% of tickets, 82% of the cash on Miami. I agree with that money there. Miami would be the way I would play that. Washington at Atlanta. This could be a zigzag. Washington did just lose really badly at Atlanta in their previous game on Tuesday, so we're replaying the same game again. Atlanta were 12.5-point favorites in that one, so you got to see how much did the line change here. Not much. They're a 12-point favorite here, so it's basically the same, but this could be the case where maybe Washington has a better game here, right? There are multiple aspects to the zigzag here, where if you had an outlier score in the first game, you do want to tend to look to fade that in the next game, right? So that would involve, basically the thing would be Atlanta's not going to take Washington seriously. They just blew them out. So how excited are they going to be to play them again? Washington will be the team that has the adjustments to make because everything went wrong, so they have things to fix. For Atlanta, everything went right, so they don't have things to fix. But I dug into that box score, and it was not a misleading score, though. Atlanta did dominate that game, so I would have preferred if it was a really misleading result for some reason, which it wasn't. I would still lean towards Washington here. Atlanta only has a game against Portland on deck, which isn't huge, so not really a look ahead. But they still might not take Washington seriously this time. Hawks are up from 11 and a half to 12. I would lean towards taking it with Washington. San Antonio at Brooklyn. San Antonio didn't really have the letdown off of the Detroit game, and they did win again at Toronto last night. So now San Antonio is on the back end of a back-to-back, possibly a delayed letdown here. And look at who they have on deck, man. Their next 3 games are at New York, the Knicks on ABC. That's a huge game. Then they got Philadelphia on NBC, and then they have Detroit. and then an ESPN game against the Clippers, then Houston, Boston, Denver, and the first two of those are on NBC and Peacock as well, as is that Philadelphia game. So all of their games that are upcoming are bigger than this one. So this might be the flat spot in the Spurs schedule, man. Brooklyn still hasn't won since before the break. I guess the worry is, are they going to start resting guys to the point where that's costing them games? I don't know, because most of those losses were on the road and to better teams than they are. So I still don't know what we're really going to get out of Brooklyn here, but I would have to lean to Brooklyn in this one. The money seems like it agrees. The Spurs are down from 13.5 to 13. Although sometimes, like I said, sometimes you don't want to be afraid to lay double digits on the road in the NBA, but this is a game where I would look to take the points with the Nets. 82% of tickets, 65% of the cash on the Spurs. The money is agreeing with me in that one, it looks like. And yes, I think it is a bad spot for the Spurs. Houston is at Orlando in the first game of the Amazon Prime doubleheader tonight. Houston is definitely the better team here. Houston coming off an easy win over Sacramento. That was yesterday, but that was a pretty low-effort game yesterday, so maybe they will still show up for a prime game going on the road, although they are playing a third game in 4 days and a fourth game in 6 days with some travel mixed in there. For Orlando, they did not play yesterday, but they're returning home from a road trip. They had 4 games, 3 of them out on the Pacific Coast, so that's a pretty big trip for Orlando, man. That was actually a trip where they were gone for a week, and they crossed country. So that is one of the spots where I start looking like, yeah, you might really want to look to fade this team in the return home spot because they're going to have stuff to do back at home. They have to shift 3 time zones. So I actually prefer Houston in this one, even though they played yesterday. You might be getting a little bit of value on them. And that was, again, a low-effort win, easy win over the Kings. Now, for Orlando, they might not overlook Houston, though, and that's the thing, because this is a prime game at home. You know, it's still a big game against a big opponent, but against a good opponent. But I would lean to the Rockets in this one. They're up from 1.5 to 2.5, 70% of the tickets and 98% of the cash on them. So it does look like some of the money is in agreement with them. Next up will be my one NBA play. We're going to do what we've been doing since the All-Star break, man. We're going to play Chicago again as a home underdog for the 3rd time coming out of the All-Star break. And I know we're 1-1 in doing this, but hopefully this is the spot to do it because we did it 2 games ago. They got killed in their last game, so hopefully now this is the spot. For Portland, they just had a close call against Minnesota, man. So Portland just had a big game at home. It was on TV. I think it was on ESPN, I believe. Let me see. Was it? I know it was on Peacock. I know I saw it on, like, I don't know, I was switching around and I had it on for a little while. But if you look at what happened in this game, yeah, I mean, it wasn't really an outlier statistically. It was a close game. So Portland did play well, but they were big underdogs here against a good Minnesota team. And Portland kept this game close the whole time. They were within 2 possessions in the final couple minutes of the game. Basically the final minute almost of the game. It was a huge performance for Portland, and now they're coming off of that. They got to go on the road to face Chicago, who hasn't won since before the All-Star break, I don't believe. And then Portland has this hot Charlotte team on deck, man. So I don't like the spot for Portland here, man. They might overlook Chicago. And for Portland, by the way, they did lose one of their best players, the dude who won't shut up about Israel, Avdija. They lost him. I believe he got hurt in the Phoenix game. He got hurt again. So he didn't play in the Minnesota game, and that made that the injured player theory spot. Where I didn't even realize that, but he is one of their best players, and he got hurt in the Phoenix game. So I think they might have stepped it up maybe a little bit for that reason against Minnesota. I don't know, but either way, it was a huge effort game. Now they're playing a Chicago team that just lost 131 to 99, dude. Like, these players they still have something to play for, man. Like, nobody wants to lose 131 to 99. And you saw a better effort from Chicago in the game before that. And I told you I didn't like them in the game against Charlotte because Chicago had a big game against the Knicks, which was one of our covers with Chicago. And I think they just maybe didn't have a whole lot left coming into the next game. But now I think after a horrible loss, I think you will get a better effort from them. They're staying at home. They've lost 4 home games in a row. Prior to that, they were actually well above 500. They were 3 games above 500 at home prior to that. So it's not like they're a horrible home team. The hope is that they're not like tanking by benching their guys or whatever, you know what I mean? But what guys do they really have? I don't know. I mean, Giddey has kind of been in and out of the lineup. I think he is supposed to play tonight. But I still like the spot for Chicago, man. So that's what we're going to do here. Coming off a horrendous loss. The fact that they showed something against the Knicks might show that they are still trying. That's what we're going to do. We will take the Bulls. Blazers have gotten some of the early money. They're up to a 4-point favorite, 81% of tickets, 92% of the cash on them. I do see 4.5s out there as well, but I think they will be a very public side. So we'll take the Bulls in that one. All dogs, what's up, man? 7-leg NHL parlay. That is definitely that is like a lottery ticket, man. I mean, good for you. Again, like I said, if you're going to play a parlay like that where you're forcing yourself to win the entire NHL board basically and not be wrong about anything, you got to just be resigned to the fact that you know that you're basically paying that money for entertainment and you have a chance to get lucky and win that thing. All right. Sacramento at Dallas. Actually, let me make sure Giddey is listed here for Chicago. Yeah, he is. Basically, Jalen Smith is still out, but hopefully, and Jaden Ivey, who I don't think has even played for them yet, because I think they got him in the trade, at the trade deadline, whatever. Sacramento at Dallas. Sacramento fell back into their losing ways with a horrible loss to Houston, although Houston's really good, but still. Losing by 31, I mean, maybe you will show up with a better effort after something like that, although that was yesterday, and they do have to travel now to Dallas off of that, and they're playing a fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities, which is not easy to do. This is a Sacramento team that's, missing two of their best players. Dallas is returning home from a road trip. Was less than a week long, but they did have a road trip, so they are returning home. They did go to Brooklyn to finish the road trip, so a little bit of travel there. They're coming back home. Sometimes the team won't be totally focused when they come back home. I don't want anything to do with it, but I guess I would lean slightly to the Kings if you want me to have a lean on the side. And this one, Mavs down from 8.5 to 7 there. So some of the money looks like it has come in against Dallas, but it's not something I want anything to do with. The Lakers are going to Phoenix. The Lakers have lost 2 games at home now. A blowout loss to Boston and then a close loss to Orlando. But now maybe it's good. They get a day off. They get to just go out on the road, maybe focus on a game of basketball, I don't think the Lakers will overlook a game now that they've lost 2 games in a row, even though they are facing an injured Phoenix team that's down their top 2 players. I thought Phoenix was going to give us a better effort against Boston, and they were for about half of the game, but they fell way short in the second half. Phoenix is now staying at home. You got to figure they will show up for a game against the Lakers as well. So this is a tough call. The Lakers look like they are getting some of the money. They're a 4.5-point favorite. 78% of tickets, 91% of the cash on the Lakers. This now being the Suns being a couple of games removed from those injuries, maybe the injuries will start catching up with them and not be great for them. I guess I'll slightly lean to the Lakers, but I don't love it, man. And the Phoenix has been really good at covering, which I mentioned on my Instagram video when I talked about the game against Boston. Phoenix has the best against the spread record in the NBA this year. But, of course, the odds makers might adjust to that because that's what they do when they have an outlier like that. They will start adjusting. Adjusting the lines towards that team, so you won't get as much value on them. New Orleans at Utah. New Orleans, nice win in their last game against Golden State, actually after beating Philly the game before that. So they're coming off a couple of decent wins. Now, they might carry that momentum with them out on the road with them to play Utah, but they might also be in a letdown spot because that was a pretty good win against Golden State, even though it's without Steph Curry and whatever. Utah is returning home. They were on the road Friday, Monday, lost both games, lost by 20 at Houston, and now they're coming back home. I know it's a return home from a road trip, but it wasn't exactly a long road trip, and they will have, I guess, sort of an elevation edge here at least. The other thing is I think Markkanen is out for the Jazz, so I think this line has moved from the Pelicans -1.5 to -4.5 because of Markkanen being out. So the Jazz are going to be pretty shorthanded here, but maybe that's still too many points. Should the Pelicans really be laying 4.5 on the road against anybody except maybe the Kings? I don't know, man. I would probably lean towards taking it with the Jazz, but it's not a strong opinion. And then the last game on Amazon Prime of the doubleheader is a decent game between Minnesota and the Clippers. Clippers have a bad overall record, but of course they're playing better over the last month or so. Minnesota did just have a close call again against Portland, where I thought they were in position to cover that, and they didn't. Maybe they'll show up for this game, but they do have a big game on deck against Denver as well on ABC. Clippers get to host an Amazon Prime game here, and they're coming off a home loss to Orlando. They've had a lot of days off. They haven't played since Sunday, and they've been in L.A. This entire time. So they've been in L.A. since coming out of the All-Star break, so the travel spot is a lot better for L.A. They're well-rested, and that rest might help them bust that two-game losing momentum here. So I think the spot is better for the Clippers in this game. The money seems like it agrees with the Wolves up to 5.5. 72% of tickets and only 69% of the cash on the T-Wolves there. So less of the money on the T-Wolves. We'll see what happens tonight, man. But that's the rundown. These are the games. Once again, my plays, college basketball, Charleston Southern plus the points. I don't know if you'll be able to get a 7 on that or not. Drexel Moneyline, or if you find a spread bet that's a better price, that at a pick 'em, I mean. UC Riverside plus the points, and then unfortunately the Bulls plus the points. That one was the last one, that made my card, so I don't know, man. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know if I love that one. That's definitely my least favorite of all of them. Let's get some wins today. Learn to Toad on Twitter. You can subscribe to me there. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Check it all out, man. It all helps me out as well. So, like and give me good, subscribe, give me good replies here on this channel. Let's boost this thing up. It's on audio as well. We're back on audio, Spreaker, and through Spreaker, Apple and Spotify. So give me good reviews. Listen over there. That helps me out as well. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel. I'm going to put my latest cover up there soon. Which I did yesterday of Breaking Benjamin. So you can check that out only on Twitter for now. But go subscribe to the YouTube channel. It'll be up there. Patreon.com/LearnToToad. And I know Mr. Mark Clare is one of my supporters over there now. So thank you, Mark. Hi, Mark. I should get that as a drop just for when Mark Clare comes into the chat. Maybe I will. I'll have a guest-specific drop just for him. But yes, patreon.com/LearnToToad. You get some bonus Uke stuff. I know I have to get that up to date. I think I have about 3 that I haven't put up there yet on that feed. And then Loser Cast every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Check that out as well. The new comedy spectacle, baby. Let's get some wins today. I want a winning day here. Let's get it done, man. Peace.